Okay, so first we have to get really clear and specific about what we mean by return, and both from a conceptual point of view and also from our calculation point of view. It's easy to mess up. So return is what we can think of as it's the percentage associated with a dollar profit, right? And so let's think about what a dollar profit is. And they give you actually a really nice example here in your book. Um, so your profit, right? It's your ending value plus your distributions minus the original cost, right? So all the cash flows minus your original cost is the profit that you make. And notice that there's no incorporation of time here, right? So the profit that you make on an investment is basically all the cash flows that come from the investment minus the original cost. And then you can take, right, and state that profit as a percentage of your original cost. And that's the first thing that you want to keep in mind. The key to these return calculations is selecting the right denominator. It has to be a return on your investment, which means the return on the asset's original cost, right? So, your return percentage is the profit over the original cost, or the loss over the original cost if you lost money. And so let's take a look at this example. I really like this example because it's just really straightforward and it illustrates these concepts, right? So we have Kevin made 2 investments over the past couple of years. He bought a baseball card that cost $50, which he sold 3 months later for $55. And then he also bought a share of stock in a startup for $42. He held the stock for 2 years. He got a cash dividend of 90 cents, and then he sold the stock for $47.82. So what were his profit and his return for those 2 investments? And which was a better investment? So the baseball card, obviously, that's a $5 profit, or 10%. And then he got, for the startup company, he got a 90 cent cash dividend and $5.82 difference between the selling price and the buying price. So his return was 16%, right? So which was a better investment? Well, it looks like the stock is a better investment, right? He made more money on it. He made $6.72 in profit, and that represents a higher percentage, right? But is that really a good comparison, right? So the thing is, the baseball card he sold 3 months later and made a $5 profit. The stock he held for 2 years, right? So it's important to keep the timelines in mind. Which was a better investment? Well, he turned around and made $5 in 3 months. Maybe that's a better investment. So the thing is that when you are comparing returns, right, you always need to do an apples to apples comparison. You have to compare returns over the same time period, right? So you have to convert holding period returns, right? The 3 months for $5, the 2 years for $6 and whatever it was cents. You have to convert those to annual returns, right? So we need to say that 10% on the baseball card actually is 40% annually, right? He made 10% in 3 months. You multiply that by 4 to get to a year. That gives you a 40% return. Whereas for the startup company's stock, right, he got a 16% return but it took him 2 years to get it, so that's only an 8% annual return. Now you could also sort of use a different way of calculating the annual return, which is with this this formula here, which was covered in that interest chapter that we didn't really address. So the investment return, if we're compounding the interest, is it comes up to be slightly different. That's okay. It's just a formula. Right. So the thing is, right, whether you compound the interest or whether you just multiply the return by 4, either way, you want to be careful about extrapolating short-term returns to annual returns, because that just doesn't make sense, right? Just the fact that you could turn a quick turnaround on a baseball card in 3 months doesn't mean that that baseball card market is going to continue to grow by 10% a quarter, right, for a whole year. So, it's really important to be careful when you're extrapolating short-term returns to annual returns, okay? But the thing is, right, here's how this little section in the chapter ends. It still seems like the better investment was the baseball card. But can you really compare investing in baseball cards to investing in stock? And so, even though we don't know that we can really believe that a, quote, investment in a baseball card is going to give 10% a quarter for a whole year, there's still this idea that, based on these numbers, that it seems like a better investment. But I'm hoping that you guys are like, how could that possibly be a better investment, right? Because one thing that we haven't included here when we're just looking at returns, we haven't included risk. We haven't included risk in our assessment of whether that baseball card was a good investment or not. Okay, so that's what we're going to take a look at in the next section.